This is gonna be a quick video about this so-called dark night of the soul, right? Uh, I'm gonna show you how all this stuff is linked to abuse and trauma. Um, is a poem written in the 16th century Spanish mystic Saint John. They had a lot to do with these mystics and these orders, and Saint John of the Cross, right? Ascent of Mount Caramel, dark night. All right. What is this whole Roman Catholic spirituality? Uh, the term dark night of the soul in Roman Catholic spirituality describes a spiritual crisis in the journey toward union with God, like the described Saint John of the Cross. And let's see. Where Saint John of the Cross tell you about who he is. Venerated Saint John of the Cross, Spanish Catholic priest, mystic, and a Carmelite friar, converso origin. Major counter-reformation in Spain. He is one of the 36 doctors of the church. He was especially known for his writings. See, and if you go, I'm sure you Salvatore Dali too. It's all about disconnecting, reconnecting, disassociation. This is all ritual abuse stuff. Okay, he was mentored by corresponding with older Carmelite. Okay. Development of the soul as considered the summit of mystical Spanish literature and among the greatest works of Spanish literature. So, but he died young. He was rich, where his father was. He ended up being poor, going to some type of Christian school. You can read it, but I'm just going to get to the point. Foundations, imprisonment, torture, and death. John was brought in front of the court of fire, accused of disobeying the ordinances of Placenza. Despite his argument that he had not disobeyed the ordinances, he was sentenced to a term of imprisonment. He was jailed in a monastery where he was kept under a brutal regime that included a brutal regimen that included public lashings before the community at least weekly, and severe isolation in a tiny, stifling cell measuring 10 feet by 6 feet, except when rarely permitted an oil lamp. He had to stand on a bench to read his breviary by the light through the hole into the adjoining room. He had no change of clothes and a penitential diet of water, bread, and scraps of saltfish. During his imprisonment, he composed a great part of his During his imprisonment, he composed a great part of his most famous poem, Spiritual Canticile, as well as a few shorter poems. The paper was passed to him by the friar who guarded his cell. He managed to escape 8 months later on 15th August 1578 through a small window in the room and joined the cell. Managed to pry open the hinges, cell door. Okay, and nurse back to health. Um, this is all I wanted to show you. It talks a lot more about this, but I wanted to highlight the abuse factor that he went through. Um, let's go back to. Oh yeah, fair use. I'm gonna be talking about a video, and I'm gonna be showing you parts of a video from a Roman Catholic or bishop, and he talks about this. Dark night of the soul. Uh, I want to show you something else with the dark night of the soul. Um, Told you it's described as a spiritual crisis. Um, While this spiritual crisis is usually temporary, it may endure for a long time. The dark night of the soul of St. Paul of the Cross in the 18th century endured 45 years. He went through this for 45 years, which he ultimately recovered. The dark night of the soul of Teresa, the dark night of the soul of Saint Teresa. Go back, go back. Clicked on the wrong thing. Okay, Saint Teresa of Calcutta, right? Whose whose own name and religion she selected to honor Saint Therese may be most extensive such case on record. Having endured from 1948 until her death in 1997, with only brief interludes of relief, according to her letters. So from 1948 to 1997, she was going through the dark night of the soul. My whole question is, man, this can't be normal. What is this? You see what I'm saying? And I know it has up to do with some type of abuse. I bet you. It don't say nothing about her right there, though. Let's see. I think that dude said something about it, though, on the video. I'm gonna go to the video. I think he said something about it. But I also want to talk about I'm going to the Book of Enoch. Dark Night of the Soul. Okay, let's talk about it. Let's see. Right here, Book of Enoch, chapter 69, and the fifth was named Cashdale. This is he who showed the children of men all the wicked smitings of the spirit and demons, and the smitings of the embryo in the womb, that he may pass away, and the smitings of the soul, the bites of the serpent, and the smiting which befall through the noontide heat, the son of the serpent named Tabet. So this so-called angel taught the smitings of the spirit and the demons, and the smiting of the embryo in the womb, that it passed away, and the smiting of the soul. That's what we're talking about, the dark night of the soul. So there was an angel that in the Book of Enoch that taught this. Let's go to Salvatore Dali. Best known work, The Persistence of Memory, completed all his famous surrealist painting. Dali lived in Spanish Civil War. Began leaving the United States in 1940, where he achieved a commercial success. He returned to Spain in 1948, where he announced his return to the Catholic faith and developed his nuclear mysticism style, based on the interests of classicism, mysticism, and recent scientific developments. Let's see. should behavior more attention to artwork. His life work was important. Surrealist pop art. A lot of this stuff, when they go through all this stuff, it's about creation. Like I made a video about the so-called automatic writing. Automatic writing and all this stuff that happens to these people, when they go through these breakdowns and stuff, it leads back to them with this born again experience, coming back to life or whatever this is, and that's when they start making all these artworks or they become inventors and all this other stuff, right? All this has something to do with it. It's the same thing. It just keep repeating, right? Um, let's see. Uh, he got a lot of stuff dealing with him. They say you're real eccentric. They got videos of him on YouTube. Post-war United States. Let's see. Where is it I want to talk about? Uh, his fears and abandonment and estrangement from his longtime artistic muse contributed to depression and failing health. Um, and at age 60, he was age 76. Dolly's health deteriorated sharply. He was depression, drug addiction, severe tremors, been supplied pharmaceutical. See what I'm saying? He died June 10th, 1982. Let's see about his. Well, let's go to this method. This is his method that was created by him. The Paranoiac-Critical method is a surrealist technique developed by Salvatore Dali in the 1930s. He employed it in production of paintings and other artworks, including those that involve optical illusions and other multiple images. The technique consisted of artists invoking a paranoid state, fear that the self is being manipulated, targeted, or controlled by others. The result is a deconstruction of the psychological concept of identity, such as subjectively becomes the primary aspect of the artwork. Uh, 1930s wrote about the fundamental crisis of the object. The object began thought of not as fixed external objects, but also as an extension of our subjective selves. One of the types of objects theorized in surrealism was a phantom object. The aspects of paranoia that Dali was interested in and which helped inspire the method was the ability of the brain to perceive links between things which rationally are not linked. That are not linked. Dali described the Paranoiac-Critical method as a spontaneous method of irrational knowledge based on critical and systematic objectivity of the association and interpretation of delirious phenomenon. So this is mind fuckery. They messing with people's minds, right? This is what they do. Like I said, what dude just went through. St. John, right? He got abused, beat up, locked in a what's the name? Yeah, he got public lashings. It deals with abuse, right? So this is what they do. And now then you have people, and then after all this abuse, this is when they are. This is when the creative aspect. They once they get over this so-called dark night or get over this trauma from this dark night, right? This is when all this creativity flows out. So this is ritual abuse on purpose, right? The Paranoiac-Critical method is ritual abuse on purpose, right? Paranoiac-Critical arose from similar surrealist experiments with psychology. They're experimenting with psychology and creation of images such as Max. How many people have been subjected to this stuff without them even knowing it? These people are doing this to people, groups of people, if they can. Okay. Fair use disclaimer. I'm gonna show you this video of what this man said right here. This bishop. I'm finna show you what he's talking about. Just talking about the abuse of this man and how he dies.
Leaders in this reform movement within their Carmelite order, and they become the founders of the so-called discalced Carmelite movement. It just means without shoes, so it means a return to greater simplicity and gospel radicalism. Well, as is often the case, reformers are not super popular with those they're trying to reform, right? So John of the Cross suffers immensely at the hands of his own brothers in the Carmelite order, some of whom literally kidnapped him, arrested him, brought him back to one of their houses, locked him in a closet, essentially, would bring him out to the dining area so the monks would have a chance to beat him. So he was actively persecuted by his own brothers. While he was under those conditions, and literally in that closet, he didn't have writing materials, they wouldn't give him that. He composed in his mind some of the masterpieces of Spanish literature. And from these poems, including the Noche Oscura, right, the Dark Night, he then develops these treatises on the mystical and spiritual life. Eventually he escaped from that imprisonment, but then, he dies, as I say, fairly young, not well known in his lifetime, not a famous figure. Died, not completely forgotten, but not as a prominent figure. And then only after his death did the church come to realize what a powerful witness he gave.
So that just show you right there. He just said it. He was abused and all this, dealing with trauma. So now I'm going to show you some more clips. Another part of this video. Let me see. At 1740, I think it is. Hold on 1 second. This part right here, the video talking about how he's finna say about how God detaches people from the world. I want you to listen carefully now. He said God detaches people from the world.
Now, I'm recording these words during Lent. So we have a version of the Dark Night of the senses during Lent, right? Is I say, well, I'm going to abstain from certain things. I'm going to give up certain things. I'm trying to detach myself from an inordinate connection to the things of this world. So that's where, if I identify, let's say it's wealth, it's power, it's sensual pleasure, it's booze, it's food, whatever it is I'm too involved.
Hold on, wait. Start at the 20 mark, 2009. God is a smokescreen word for something else or someone else or people.
God's got to take the initiative now and take away from us things that we do not want to be separated from. Now, there's suffering if you want. Yeah, absolutely. So this is very, to me, Brandon, really interesting. So someone's going through their life and suddenly something that they loved, and it was good in itself, and it's not sinful, let's say, but something they loved was taken away from them. Some dream they had, now I realize that's not going to happen. Some relationship, and now it's been severed, and I'm suffering.
See what I'm saying? So this detachment stuff. This is what I'm talking about. Dealing with the. It's still dealing with the. It's still dealing with that high mind type stuff. That collective consciousness is they keep on. Matter of fact, hold on. Let's go to it. It should be down at the bottom. Ego death. All this is in the same category. I also see ego death, existential crisis, because they're talking about the same experience. It might be done in different ways, but it's the same thing. They can do this not just with the abuse. It might be somewhat mixed with semen retention. It might be um, some other kind of mystical way they do it. You see what I'm saying? But it's all dealing with the same thing: connection, disconnection, changing, rerouting. But at the same time, once this happens, this disconnection, then they'll try to lead you somewhere else, whether you become another Christian or a Muslim or a Jewish person. You was like this, but then what he was saying, then God steps in and takes everything away from you. Now you devote your life to something else. Just like what he did, this St. John, this is where the writing comes in. This is where the inventions come in. Stuff like that right there, because they put you in that state of consciousness. But it's not just people outside of you doing this. It also deals with you too. I don't want to put it on just people on the outside of you doing it. But it's just dealing with you not being connected to or aligned with something that you know is true. So you shift your perspective and you go somewhere else. And this is where they talking about this existential crisis, right? Because you realize that what you believed in was not true. But then you shift and go to another path. Or with that time that you're in this dark night of the soul, this is where you create things, or you try to reform things. You start looking at how the world works and all this other stuff. But a lot of this stuff does have to do with trauma and abuse. Because the breaking away and the tearing away from the collective, it has something to do with abuse. You see what I'm saying? He tore away from the collective because he was part of the order. He wanted to reform some things. He was counter reformationist or whatever, and he wanted to reform things. And his brothers didn't want that because he wanted to change something. He ended up getting abused or beat down by these people, which shifted his whole perspective on what he was a part of and how he wanted to move forward. So he went into that cave or whatever they want to call it on that mountain. These esoteric terms they talk about, all right, in the cave, on the mountain, and start creating something new. This is where, like I said, automatic writing. Whenever they go through this process, or people go through this process, they end up coming back with something new. You know what I'm saying? But the focus on this video is talking about the trauma and the abuse. A lot of that stuff is what caused this stuff. You know what I'm saying? But Um, Now I'm finna go back. I'm finna go back to that video. I'm finna go back to the 21 mark. First he said God is doing this to you. Now he gonna say in the next breath at the 21 mark he gonna say maybe God is doing this to us. Then listen.
Suffering from that, I hate it. I'm objecting to it. But might I read it, not just in worldly terms, but now begin to read it theologically and spiritually? Maybe God is taking this away from me. Why? That I might find a greater detachment that will enable me to come to a higher and more intense relationship with Him. See, so like if you're doing spiritual direction with someone and they're going through a real struggle because they've lost something, it might be a fair question to ask. Okay, remember our friend Jean-Pierre de Caussade, right? Whatever happens is directly or indirectly God's will.
Nah, that when he said that, that put my mind in a whole different frame because that's true. Then you really don't even have free will. If it is anything that happened is directly or indirectly God's will, you stuck. You don't have free will at all then. But listen what he just said. He just said that God may be taking this away from me to bring you closer to them. This is where you get people saying, oh, this person switched up or they changed. And like I say, it's the splitting of that high mind consciousness that everybody was operating like this. Now something happens. And it's not, it's individual. It's dealing with individuals. You know, you got your own mind. So no one has the right to control your mind. But I'm saying there are manipulation tactics and other things that could be happening to people to make them change their mind. That's what I'm saying. The whole thing, like the ritual abuse, all this stuff has something to do with the changing of the mind. Now, your friends, family, and the people around you start looking at you crazy like something is wrong with you. Or this, it used to be like this, you know, and it is people in the cut behind the scenes laying and praying on you as if they done put all their money, all their eggs in one basket. Or we gonna make this nigga do this, or we had him set up to be a rapper, or we had him set, and now they looking at you crazy like something is wrong with you. No, and the change that happened was partly you and partly something else. So it's not really bad at all, but it's bad if manipulation is involved and abuse. If manipulation and abuse is involved, psychologically, physically, it's bad, no matter what it is. You see what I'm saying? But I'm finna hurry me in this video. I'm finna get down to this 30, let's see. It talks about, I think, Mother Teresa, 3307. Let's see.
Experienced this dark night of the soul in a profound way, namely Mother Teresa. One of our mutual friends, Father Paul Murray, wrote a whole book titled "I Loved Jesus in the Night," which was reflecting on the revelations Mother Teresa the revelations we had after Mother Teresa's death, when her diaries were published, and it became very clear that for not just
I told you, always some type of creative work. And then after she died, they get the creative work. Then what happened? They publish them. That's money. See what I'm saying?
months or years, but for decades even, she experienced this profound dark night of the soul. Can you talk about how that shaped her and what her experiences were like?
Yeah, you know, at the beginning of her call, especially to serve the poorest of the poor, she had a lot of consolations. She heard, and she said quite literally, the voice of Jesus calling her. And she felt this extraordinary intimacy and extraordinary sense of purpose. Well, she was given all kinds of consolations, but then Christ took those away. Now, why? Well, consult John of the Cross. You take them away because God wants you, Christ wants you to fall in love with his will, which she did. There's no question about it. She fell in love with the will of Christ, which was to serve the poorest of the poor. Paul Murray talks about this, which I think is very John of the Cross-esque. Namely, it's the closeness of God to us that can produce a darkening. Now, why? Because it's the overpowering of the light. You know, Aristotle said that a long time ago, that we can be blind through lack of light or excess of light. So there's no light, I don't see what's going on, but if you give me excess of light, I also can't see what's going on. So the saints are those who live very close to God's will, and they experience, therefore, a kind of excess of light. If you're living in God, it's going to make you, there's a certain awkwardness now of your involvement with the world, because you've been decentered, you've been displaced in a way, you've been placed in a higher world.
That's all I really wanted to say. I just wanted to show you that they said she went through that stuff through decades. That dark night or so, she went through it for decades. And she came out and she had diaries, stuff like that right there. And they took it, they published it. You see what I'm saying? But he said she had a calling, whatever that means, you know. But all I'm saying is, in this video, is there is a connection to all this stuff, this paranoiac stuff, this ritual abuse type stuff. All this stuff is connected in some kind of way, I'm telling you. And you can see it. Dark night of the soul, this angel taught the smiting of the soul, whatever that means. The fallen are still here, if you ask me. And the ritual abuse tactics are their work. Why? Because it's always inverted. They're always trying to change or reform mankind. They're always praying, watching, or doing things to mankind. You see what I'm saying? They're always experimenting on mankind. It was a what? It was a psychological experiment. The Paranoiac-Critical rose from similar surrealist experiments with psychology and the creation of images such as which involve rubbing pencil. You see what I'm saying? It's always the fallen. If you look at what they do, they always experiment on mankind and on the animals. It's always about controlling, trying to control somebody else's nature. That's all I got for this video.